Raleigh Court on the intersection of science and scripture. For Christians, this intersection can raise questions and challenges. We've probed outer space and haven't found heaven. We've dated the cosmos to billions of years, while Genesis says that God made the world in 6 days. So what do we do with these questions? Do we plug our ears to scientific reason or reject Christianity altogether? Well, we'll dig into some of those questions over the next few weeks on Sundays and touch upon those topics in our Wednesday videos too. For this morning, we're turning to the book of Isaiah and looking at a scripture passage that's full of questions. Who has measured the waters in the hollow of his hand and marked off the heavens with a span, enclosed the dust of the earth in a measure, and weighed the mountains in scales and the hills in a balance? Who has directed the Spirit of the Lord, or as his counselor has instructed him? Whom did he consult for his enlightenment? And who taught him the path of justice? Who taught him knowledge and showed him the way of understanding? Even the nations are like a drop from a bucket, and are accounted as dust on the scales. See, he takes up the isles like fine dust. Isaiah writes to the Israelites during the Babylonian exile in a moment when the return to their homeland is on the horizon. But the people have their doubts. Can it really be? How so? Can God really do this? Isaiah responds, answering the questions of the Israelites with his own questions. The long list reminds me of a toddler who's filled with questions, who asks their parents why more times than the parent ever thinks could be uttered. But instead of these questions having varied answers, Isaiah's questions only have one answer: God. Who has measured the waters? God. Who has directed the Spirit of the Lord? No one else, just God. Who did God consult for his enlightenment? No one else. God already was. Who taught God his knowledge? Well, God already had it. You can hear Isaiah's persistent nature in these rhetorical questions that he turns back on the Israelites, as if he's saying, come on, you know the answer already. Yes, well, we're still in exile, and these foreign emperors claim charge of our lives and their armies keep us in check. The answer to all of these questions is still God, our incomparable God, whose might and majesty cannot be measured nor compared, who is more than enough in the face of our current predicament, the one who renews our strength, saves us, and carries us through. I have to believe that even as Isaiah responds to the Israelites with rhetorical questions, he understands the place where their questions come from. Life has been confusing and uncertain, and just when the Israelites think that they've figured out life in Babylon, it's all about to change again. Enough has happened that the Israelites are weary and skeptical. Doubt is warranted in this moment. And while doubt is warranted in this moment, so too is Isaiah's response, a reminder of what the Israelites and us too know to be true. What we know we can trust, even in the face of confusing human affairs. Neither nature nor the nations can thwart the will of our mighty God. The words of Isaiah in a different translation read, who has measured the waters in the palm of a hand, or gauged the heavens with a ruler, or scooped up the earth's dust in a measuring cup, or weighed the mountains on a scale and the hills in a balance? Neither nature nor the nations can thwart the will of our mighty God. And despite Isaiah's demeanor, Isaiah doesn't have all of the answers for the Israelites, nor do Andrew and I have all of the answers for us now. But we do have the promises as found in our scripture that we all need to be reminded of from time to time. That our God is incomparable, that our God came to dwell among us in the flesh, that our God longs for us to know our belovedness, that our God can hold and hear our questions, and that God is for all of us, strengthening the powerless, renewing the strength of those who wait upon them, so that those who wait upon the Lord shall run and not be weary, and walk and not be faint, as Isaiah later says in this chapter. But before we can jump into those bold proclamations that Isaiah offers us of God's sovereignty, the doubts have to be waded through. It's only in walking through our doubts, rather than ignoring them, that we can boldly proclaim God's reign and God's abundant grace for us. I'm reminded of the process of confirmation, which begins again next month. Before classes begin, I meet with each student and their family, and we talk about how confirmation ends with a statement of faith, a snapshot of the student's faith in this moment. And in this meeting, we also talk about how confirmation is a great space for asking all of the big questions that we have. Sometimes our questions feel weird, they feel too big, and we don't know what to do with them. But in confirmation, often here, as we ask these questions, we learn that we're not the only one with this exact question. And it can be a beautiful season of Me Too as we explore the answers together. And if we don't ask those questions during confirmation, well, how can we make a statement of faith at the end? It would be an impossible feat if we don't wade through our questions first, in order to take stock of what it is we do believe and can boldly proclaim about God in this moment. Questions around God often feel weighty. Yet we have these texts like Isaiah 40 and most of the book of Job reminding us that questions are part of our faith tradition. And even in the questions that feel far out there, we can keep coming back to the promises we know of who it is our God is. As we begin this series on science and scripture, the following quote by Rachel Held Evans is worth packing along for the journey. "If there's one thing I know for sure, it's that serious doubt, the kind that leads to despair, begins not when we start asking God questions, but when, out of fear, we stop." So keep asking questions. You might not be starting confirmation next month, but there are our small groups that meet throughout the week. There are our variety of Sunday school options on Sunday mornings. You can ask those folks questions, your pastors, your family, your friends. And of course, you can ask God your questions too. Know that this is a place where your questions can be heard and be held. And as we go throughout the next few weeks, go into them bringing the questions that you have with you. For so long as we wade through our questions rather than ignoring them, it becomes easy to proclaim God's bold love for us and the promises that are with us, even in our questions.